there, Islanders. Miss Griggs here, and today we're going to be doing the simple iron reaction using steel wool lab. Okay, so find your journal, whether it's digital or the hard copy, and find these simple iron reactions using steel wool worksheet. Okay, so first thing we're going to do in this lab, we're going to be looking at how steel wool, which is a metal, reacts to copper sulfate. So here we have some copper sulfate solution, and you can see that it is this lovely blue color. Kind of looks like the color of Windex. Some might call it cobalt blue, things like that. So it's this nice blue color. So that's the question number one. So color of the copper 2 sulfate solution. And then what we're going to do is we're going to dip the solution, or sorry, dip the steel wool into our solution here and see what happens. So steel wool is made up of iron and a little bit of carbon. And look at that beautiful color. So we have, it has turned to this bright coppery color when I dipped it into the solution. So what's happening here is the iron, or sorry, the copper is clinging to the iron on the steel wool, okay? And that's what's going on. That's why it turned that nice coppery brown color. So write that down for part A, observations, what color did it turn? And then for part B, I'm gonna take the mass of my steel wool and then I'm gonna put it into the flame, okay? So I have another sample that I'm gonna use over here. I've already let dry because this one has to cool off first, okay? So I'm gonna heat this up, and I've already taken the mass. The initial mass is 5.6 grams, and I'm gonna heat it up. And I want you to pay attention to it as we heat it up, okay? And then we'll find the mass again. Okay, so I'm gonna heat this up, so pay attention, look at the colors. So you can see we have some sparks. All the way. And it is burning off. It's changing colors. It's no longer brown. It is actually kind of this steely blue color, if you can see that. See if we can get a close-up. See that nice blue color? You can still see a little bit of the copper that I didn't burn off, but it's kind of this steely blue color now. All right, and I'm gonna get the mass real quick over here on my scale, off camera. All right, looks like it is now 5.8 grams. So it increased in mass. That's kind of strange because you saw that stuff flying off of it. So how would it have increased in mass? Well, let's think about that. The reaction itself is when it's oxidizing, right? So when something oxidizes, that means it gains electrons or it gains oxygen, right? So let's look at these questions and see if we can't figure it out. So question 1, these are the interpretation questions on the back of the handout. When the steel wool was placed in the copper sulfate, the iron in the steel wool, it gave up its valence electrons to the copper ions that were in the solution. Those iron atoms became iron ions and went into the solution, while the copper ions became copper atoms and plated onto the steel wool. That's why it turned orange. The copper atoms plated to the iron atoms on the steel wool. Question 2 says that some people say that when the steel wool is placed in the copper 2 sulfate solution that the iron rusts. But in reality, the iron atoms give up their valence electrons to the copper ions, that's the first blank, in the solutions and become iron ions. The color on the steel wool is due to the copper atoms coming out of solution. All right, question 3, of the two elements, iron and copper, which is more reactive? Iron is going to be more reactive. And we know that iron is more reactive because of how far to the right it is in the periodic table. Next question, number 4, says, when heated, the flame of the steel wool gains mass, which you wouldn't think would happen, but it actually gains mass. And a possible reason, so this is B, a possible reason for the mass appeared to change in the direction it was because it combines with the oxygen atoms from the air to form iron oxide. And in this case, our iron oxide was that nice kind of steely blue color. All right, so fill those questions in. If you have any questions, email me, Miss Griggs, and submit your lab on Schoology. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.